Thank you so much, Pratik and Samrat, for joining us on this podcast at Live. This is again a product deep dive session with very experienced founders who come with a very strong background and then decided to kind of build something of their own. But before we go to the interesting set of questions that we have relating to the product, we'll also give a brief introduction to give a good context to our audience. So the name of the product is Rocket.in. It's an emerging OTT platform which is focused on delivering anytime, anywhere entertainment tailored specifically for Bharat. Bharat means the tier 1, tier 2 cities, targeting audience in smaller towns and rural India with culturally relevant and relatable content. Built on the strong tailwinds of India's rapidly growing digital ecosystems, over 1 billion internet users and rising smartphone and smart TV penetration, the platform Rocket.in aims to tap into underdeserved segments with high consumption potential. The company's vision is to win the hearts of real India by addressing unmet entertainment needs, combining accessibility with localized storytelling and affordable digital access. With a clear roadmap towards scale, Rocket.in projects strong subscriber growth and aims to achieve profitability by its third year, driven by strategic investments in content, marketing, and technology. Welcome you both, Samrat and Pratik, and thank you so much for taking out time to share your product with us.
Thank you, Rishikesh.
Now, the first thing is that every founder has got a story. So, what, as per you, was the core insight that made you believe that India, especially Bharat, needed a new kind of OTT platform?
Okay, so with India and more so with Bharat, if you were to look at, as you rightly said, that about 1 billion internet penetration, but about 500 million of them are on OTT. When we look at the media landscape and the OTT landscape, the next 500 million probable people who are already on internet and are looking at going on to the natural progression of getting into OTT would happen from the tier 2, tier 3 and rural India, and more so from the perspective that this category, this set of consumers are not have a very strong unmet content need, because the current OTT brands are basically targeting metro-centric and state capital-centric tier 1 and metro-centric content, which is a lot westward looking. And a lot of trial and error they are doing, but they have not been able to crack the rural and the tier 1 and tier 2 markets. If we were to also look at certain secondary data like the OTT platforms, which also have their own television network, you'll find the maximum viewership is actually for catch-up TV. And television, as we all know, are talking to this tier 2, tier 3 and rural audience predominantly. And if you were to see the growth of television amongst the television, which is at about 900 million viewership and still growing and growing largely on the back of this tier 2, tier 3 and rural India. So there is a nascent need that we realize that there is for content for this segment that is a complete virgin territory, and no one has yet targeted them at all. So, Samrat, you wanted to add?
Yeah, so Rishikesh, the core insight was simple, but yet it was very, very powerful. As Pratik has mentioned through the data points that India's digital growth has outspaced its cultural representation. While hundreds of millions came online from Bharat, most of the OTT platforms continued serving the urban and the premium narratives. So, therefore, there's a deep emotional gap, both in terms of stories, in terms of dialects, in terms of humor and aspirations of the Bharat, which are still underrepresented. So, we saw an opportunity to build not just another OTT platform, but a platform that feels native to the Bharat and not adapted for it.
In
So,
their language, in their vernaculars specifically as well.
It's basically, it's kind of mixed, like, means sometimes I see something else. तो बीच में एक दो आ जाता है जिससे मैं थोड़ा रिलेट कर लेता हूँ, अरे यार ये तो मेरे सिटी में, ये तो मेरे स्टेट में बोला जाता है. बट इफ देयर इज ए प्लेटफॉर्म वेयर आई कैन डिसाइड कि मेरे को बंगाली में कंटेंट देखना है और मेरे को बंगाली स्पेसिफिक कंटेंट चाहिए, तो दैट्स एक्चुअली a need. You have built and scaled large media brands before, and you both of are like kind of big shots in media brands. People who don't know can go on the LinkedIn profile and check the profile of Pratik and Samrat both. So what lessons from those experiences directly shaped this venture?
One of the one major point that we have always focused on while making content, okay,
Yes.
whosoever it may be, it might be for the metro urban metropolis TG, or for the tier 2 tier 3 or rural. We focus completely on consumer centricity, looking at the consumers, understanding the need gap, understanding the psychology, understanding the pain point, and weaving content, weaving stories from their lives, with their lives, and for them is sacrosanct. And this is something that we followed to the T, and that has also been the backbone of our success.
Yeah. Samrat, you want to add something?
Yeah, no, before answering to your question, let me, for your viewers, let me also, give a little bit of background about myself. And probably, that would also help in terms of answering to the question that you have asked. So, I've been a media professional with more than 2.5 decades of experience. And I worked in several media companies. And my last job assignment was with Z Entertainment, wherein I was a part of the senior leadership team. And in my last held position was that of a chief cluster officer, East, North, and Premium Cluster. And I was responsible for leading 9 channels and the Bengali language OTT of Z.
Yeah.
So, therefore, I played a very crucial role in terms of strengthening Z's regional entertainment dominance, especially through a Bengali channel called Z Bangla and the other channels which were part of my portfolio. So my primary role and responsibilities was to oversee the P&L of the respective channels, and the content strategy, marketing strategy, and production for my portfolio of channels. So I have throughout, built a very strong, business culture on the back of consumer centricity, which Pratik also spoke about, and innovation. So having worked across channels and markets, it has helped me to develop a deep insight and understanding about the Bharat audiences. So, basis this understanding and analysis, the need space that exists in the content ecosystem has led both me and Pratik to come up with the idea of Rocket. Now, that is the kind of background that I have. Now, to answer to your question, is that having worked on scaling media and content ecosystem, so there are a couple of key lessons that have shaped our venture. One, my strong kind of understanding, having worked in the television ecosystem, is that content and distribution has to go hand in hand. Okay, so the great content, we have seen that many a times, a great content also fails without the right reach strategy. So your distribution and content has to be well synced. Number one, consumer centricity, very very important, because audience segmentation in India is everything.
Yes.
It's not just one market, because in India we are talking about some 50 plus micro markets, which we in our language call mini Bharats. So, and number three, the pricing point, the affordability and accessibility drive the scale more than the premium positioning. So the content that you create for your consumer has to be relatable, and needs to have a kind of a relevance in their life. So this has led us to design a platform that is a bottom up rather than a top down approach.
And when you look at a content, three things it needs to fulfill. It has to have a relatability factor to it. It has to have an aspirational factor to it, and also the seek in Hindi, or learning as we call it in English, that is there. There has to be certain value proposition for the person to learn from them. There has to be relatability that, hey, this is my life. And there is also aspiration that I wish I could live my life this way. These are the three tenets on which a successful content always works.
And I still remember the story that you quoted in your last podcast, where you talked around data, where where there's a spike and there's a spike down. So, you kind of used to identify. You need to have various spikes within the content, is what you're talking about.
Correct.
So that gives you an idea that what is exactly which the audience will look at, because it was a long form content. If you talk about G Bangla and all that, it's a long form content, and in order to retain people for the entire episode, these spikes are very important. So there will be a lot of use of data in this, I think. Means the kind of content people are using also in their kind of native languages, and I think that experience will also help you kind of build it better. Pratik, India has over 100 million internet users, I think, and a massive mobile penetration. Everybody, right from the chai wala to corporate employees, software techie, everybody has got now mobile. What gap still exists in content consumption despite this scale?
As I was talking about certain numbers, as you said, 1 billion internet users, 70% of the internet users are accessing it through their mobile phones, through their smartphones. OTT consumption is at about 500 million vis-a-vis television, which is at about 900 million. Television is still growing at a rate of 2 to 3%. Obviously, it is near saturation. But OTT is growing at close to about 12 to 15%. Different data points will throw different numbers, but it is easy to say that it is roundabout in the 13.5% number. Okay. So it's a rapid growth that we see. And in the next 5 to 7 years, we expect television and OTT to be neck to neck in terms of viewership. Will one replace the other? That's a different debate altogether, not getting into it completely. But we have to realize that this growth that is going to come is going to come on the back of the market that the addressable market that is going to be the tier 2 tier 3 India, and this number is growing rapidly. And we can see from the YouTube adoption, because once you get access to internet on your phone and good quality internet, social media and OTT are the first two drivers for adoption and usage. Because if you were to look at 20 GB per data, 20 GB per month data is the average consumption in India. So this is likely to increase because the data is one of the India happens to be the country with the one of the cheapest data in the world. The likelihood of accessing and the growth is far higher.
Yeah, Samrat.
Yeah, so as Pratik has rightly put in terms of the data points, that in India we have 1 billion internet users, and if I talk about this entire OTT ecosystem, so 500 million plus users are currently active. So in terms of the gap, number one, so it is one high data access but low content relatability. So none of the OTT platforms currently are designing content which would cater to the underserved entertainment needs of the real Bharat. Number two, the content discovery is broken for the non-urban users. And number three, which I feel is that most platforms assume that there is a high willingness to pay without decoding the mind space of the non-urban consumers. So the real gap is not the access at this point in time. The real gap is in the form of its relevance, the pricing alignment, and the cultural intimacy. So this are very, very important in our business. And therefore, these are the kind of gaps which exist, and we are trying to cater and fulfill the kind of a gap that exists through our product, which is Rocket.in.
Yeah. And why do all these OTT platforms have not focused on urban audiences? Is it because they think that they will not pay? And why did you choose to focus on smaller towns and rural India?
The presumption, and there are quite a few presumptions as a marketer for other categories, also one of the things that I've learned. One of the presumptions that people tend to have is that the low hanging fruit, people who are willing to pay and getting into the SVOD, which is subscription video on demand, is going to come from the metropolis and the top tier 1 urban centers, which has driven them to target that as a low hanging fruit. But here in our case, what we are looking at is a hybrid model of a SVOD plus AVOD kind of a base, wherein we keep the pricing at a affordable range. And one of the things also that I've learned from one of my previous stints when I was selling mobile phones, and we became the second largest in the country and the seventh largest in the world. You know the brand, of course.
Yes.
The compulsion for consumers is not price. It is the value for money that drives them to actually go spend their money, and if the value is right, they don't mind spending the money. And that is something that currently people are targeting only the low hanging fruit of the urban metropolis and not looking at the tier 2 and tier 3 and rural India.
Got it.
Yeah. So, as I've already said some time back, is that we have currently 1 billion internet users, and only 500 million users are currently active on OTT platforms, right? So the next phase of growth, according to us, will come from that next 500 million users, and where the loyalty is still unclaimed. So if I talk about urban markets, so urban India is already saturated and subscription fatigue. However, if I talk about the non-urban markets, for example, the tier 2, tier 3, and the rural markets, one important aspect is that it is very, very high in terms of mobile first and video first. Number two, it has got a very high time spent. However, currently it is low on platform loyalty. And number three, it is underserved but highly aspirational in nature. So we are not entering into a very, very crowded space. What we are trying to do is that we are trying to build our own market. We are trying to enter an unbuilt market for ourselves. Yeah,
And so, okay, one differentiation I understood. Now, what makes your platform fundamentally different? Content I understood, pricing, distribution, experience. Like, if you could touch upon that.
Okay. I'll talk about the user interface, what we are looking at. What we are looking at from the not the run-of-the-mill interface that OTTs tend to provide. What we are looking at is a unique discoverability platform wherein one can look at the entire India, look at the specific geography that they belong to, select that, and content would be delivered to them basis that geography. We are not getting into at the later stage, we'll also get into other demographics and also the psychographics. But primarily, what we are looking at in terms of geographies, as Samrat rightly put it, there are 50 plus mini markets within the country, and a lot of people actually call it is that India is not a country. It is basically a bunch of countries grouped together and parodying as a country.
Yes.
That's exactly how we from the user interface are looking at addressing this issue. From the content perspective, we are looking at a very regionalized, localized stories, content, basically that resonates with each micro geography and can be taken forward because a lot of insights are actually quite universal.
Yes.
Okay. Just to give you one small example, chit fund. Okay. And I'm throwing a random thought. A chit fund is a universal issue. Okay.
Yes.
But it can be localized from say a small town like Kanpur. Okay.
Yes.
Or Jaunpur. Okay. The advent of technology and the social media and the effect it has over the value system of the real Bharat. Okay. And the tug of war between them. Another fertile ground on which content can be. And there are many, many more. I mean, hundreds that we have there. I'm just stating a couple of them just to explain that content can be made specific to the geography. User interface will be made specific to the geography and henceforth also expanded to other demographic data and psychographic data.
Yes, of course. If I talk about four important pillars of differentiation for us are content, pricing, distribution, and experience. So Pratik just now spoke about the experience, how we are going to create the vernacular UI and intuitive discovery. In terms of content, let me reiterate the fact that we are understanding our consumers. We are going to design our content, which is going to be very, very hyper local, high frequency, and emotional driven storytelling is going to be there in all our product offering. Pricing, I think just now Pratik also mentioned about that, in terms of the kind of a pricing model, we are working out an hybrid model, which is going to be a combination of SVOD and AVOD for us. And number three, for distribution, which I said, distribution is also very, very important and goes hand in hand to build the reach along with kind of a robust content. So, we are planning to do a lot of, partnerships with telecoms and other B2B stuff that we are looking at, the local ecosystem, the offline touch points, which is going to even make our business even more robust. So we are not competing on more content at this point in time. What we are trying to compete is on more connection. So we want to connect and win the heart of our consumers who are residing in the tier 2, tier 3 and the rural areas of India. Who are residing in the tier 2, tier 3 and rural areas of real India, which we are calling Bharat, the real Bharat.
Now, one of the most important questions is that creating content will be a tough task. So how are you thinking about content creation for Bharat audience? What works, what doesn't work?
I think Samrat should start off on this bit.
Yeah. So, as I've mentioned when I was taking you through the kind of profile of work that I've done in the last 25 years, and I've mentioned one line that, I have always built a very strong business culture on the back of consumer centricity and innovation. So in any other, category or any other business, in our business also, consumers play a very, very important role, right? So, what we are planning to do and what we have been doing throughout our career, throughout our media journey, is that we try to always decode the fundamentals aspect which triggers the consumption behavior of our audiences, right? And we try to decode their mind space in three particular segments: at their personal level, at their societal level, at their psychological level. Okay. So we try to decode the value system that exists, the aspiration, the likes, the dislikes of the consumers. We even go further in terms of we try to decode how at a societal level they have been seen within the society, their interpersonal relationship within their family, with their in-laws, within the society per se. So these are some of these kind of factors: the personal factors, the societal factors, and the psychological factors. We decode, we dig deep in terms of finding those insights, and then we plow it back in terms of our content designing. So likewise, our approach is going to be very, very similar. We would reach out to our consumer cohort. We will try to find out factors that would eventually lead to their consumption. Leading to their consumption means that we would be able to create a content or the product offering which would be relatable and which will also have relevance in their life, and that is what is going to make it more unique to them, right? And in terms of what works, what doesn't work, so we have seen through the various a supply chain that currently exists in the ecosystem, is that family drama with aspiration led stories, particularly for the rural areas, mythology, folklore, rooted narratives, high drama, high emotion, strong hook points. Even the short formats, the vertical formats also does very, very well. I think according to me, what doesn't really work or cut across with this cohort of audiences is a very, very slow burn narratives, and which is very, very highly urban and very niche storytelling. So this is something at this point in at this phase of our journey, it is a strict no-no for us. So we are trying to build a high volume, high driven content engine, and not just a hit driven studio model. So we really want to win the heart of our consumers.
I kind of, relate to this kind of a content. So I think a week back, I was watching a small video content like 12 to 13 minutes on YouTube. And this was about this city of Varanasi, where there is a person who is very heavy, who is very fat, and he's not getting married because he's fat. He has already touched 33, 34 and all that. And then he saw a girl who's like, running across, and she was very fit. And then this lady came and sat just beside him on that park chair that was there, and he asked her that आप तो मैरिड होंगे, आप तो बहुत फिट हैं. तो दैट लेडी सेड दैट अरे चेहरा थोड़ा सा काला है, आपका कलर, बॉडी, आपका ये. तो मेरे को बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग लग रहा है, बिकॉज आई थिंक इफ वी कैन टैप इनटू सच काइंड ऑफ ए कंटेंट. मैंने पूरा 13 मिनट्स वीडियो देखा बिकॉज मेरे लिए बहुत रिलेटेबल था, बिकॉज आई ऑल्सो बिलोंग टू दैट पार्ट ऑफ इंडिया. और मैंने बहुत बार देखा है कि लड़कियों की शादी इसलिए नहीं होती बिकॉज थोड़ा कलर उनका हाँ वैसा होता है. दिस इज ए वेरी
Yeah, in fact,
इंटरेस्टिंग.
as you have rightly indicated, during my tenure with Z, and since I was also handling one of the regional channel by the name of Z Bangla, we did a similar story, fiction story, on those similar lines called Krishna Koli, and it went on to become one of the biggest hit in the Bengali television ecosystem, right? And yeah, in fact, you will be surprised to know that when also I was part of various non-fiction shows and reality shows, we saw great participation coming from women, particularly who resides in the smaller towns and from the rural areas, because there are many stories of struggles and triumphs which they want it to be showcased on the smaller screen or on the bigger screen. So that is the kind of a relatable subject that I'm talking about, right? So no, those stories are really going to be very, very important in our journey, wherein those stories will also help tell the stories of their personal achievements, the struggle that they have gone through and how they have been able to overcome that, and therefore the stories of their personal achievements. And I think those kind of stories would end up being more relatable and more kind of will also have a lot of relevance in their life.
Absolutely, sir. And when we kind of see the projections, like you show profitability from year 3. So what are the key levers that will drive subscriber growth and revenue?
So, what we are looking at is aggressive, insightful content making with a aggressive marketing to basically acquire subscribers, and looking at a high retention, about 60 to 70% kind of a retention, so that we continue our journey and get break even by the third year. There are a couple of factors that we also need to keep in mind when we're doing that. One is that cost efficiency in terms of consumer acquisition cost. We are looking at a lot of growth hacking techniques that we have sharpened over the years while we were in the media and entertainment business. That is one part of it. Looking at a cost of acquisition which is less than half of what is the industry standard right now for the existing OTTs. And we are looking at a fraction of a cost for content making also, by leveraging markets which make equally good content but at a much cheaper, much cost efficient manner than, say, working in a market like a Bangalore or a Bombay or a Hyderabad or a Chennai, which is obviously rather expensive to actually work with. So we've cracked these two codes through our own experience and expertise while working in the media and entertainment sector, and also the consumer acquisition. So these are the factors that will help us get aggressive with the same money to get more consumers, looking at strong retention and breaking even by the third year.
And do you also feel that this will change the entire artist landscape in India, because you will be empowering those artists as well?
Of course, that's what we are looking at. We are looking at new faces, fresh talent, looking at more exposure for people from the smaller towns. Obviously, we are making content for the people. There has to be by the people as well.
Yes.
There is a lot of talent within the country which doesn't get exposure. What we are looking at is pulling them out and giving them the center stage, and that is
Yes.
also our intent.
Yes. And how do you think, like, abhi jo content consumption hai, how will this entire, this platform that is Rocket will change the entertainment consumption for a user in tier 2, tier 3 city? मतलब अभी ये लोग क्या देखते हैं, कैसे change होता
Okay. So right now, content consumption is in a short format through social media, which is there through Instagram and through Facebook, and also longer format through YouTube. What we expect is content which is specific for them, so they will adapt a new format wherein they get it at a very affordable price. There will be a gradual adoption initially, and that adoption will gain pace within a year, and we expect ourselves to reach about 5 to 6 million very soon subscribers.
है? And the revenue model is like completely from the subscription, or like other revenue models as well? Yes.
That is something Samrat already clarified a couple of times. Is going to be a hybrid model of SVOD and AVOD both. So it is going to be subscription based, and it's also going to be ad based. So instead of just being subscription based and having a very steep subscription, people don't mind watching ads as long as the ads are good. Ads are also a form of entertainment, so to speak, in India.
Yes.
People actually love watching it. And if you were to see the online cricket telecasts, they have proven that advertising AWOD also works pretty well.
No, I think Rishikesh, obviously, as I've already said, that our endeavor is to, create content which is relatable to the Bharat audiences, and therefore that would help us to drive kind of a strong engagement with our audiences. So once you have a strong engagement, it always helps in terms of getting the desired subscription from the audiences. Also, it also helps in terms of advertising monetization. And what we are also very cognizant about the fact that for AWOD model, the DAU and MAU, which is like daily active user and the monthly active user, these numbers are very, very important to draw more ads on the platform. So, all these statistics we will keep in mind while designing our content, which will also help to, as I've said, lead a kind of a robust business model for us.
1 second. And now, the last question is like around, once it succeeds at a scale, once Rocket succeeds at a scale, how do you see it reshaping the India's media and entertainment landscape?
What we expect to do is accelerate the growth of OTT from 500 million to the television numbers of 900 million. And we expect it to grow instead of the 12 to 15%, we expect it to grow faster at around 18 to 20%. This is a moderate estimate that we are looking at. What we intend to do is to cater to the specific needs of Bharat. And this is where the audience is supposed to come. The next 500 million audience is supposed to come. It will happen faster, and a rapid growth of OTT penetration here in India is destined to be there. That is what we expect.
Yeah, Samrat. Yes.
Yeah, so fundamentally, our vision is to reshape the industry. One, in terms of shift from the metro-centric storytelling to the Bharat first narratives. Number two, create a new creator, economy in the regional India or the regional space. And number three, to redefine transition from the subscription-heavy kind of a model to an hybrid mass model, which is what, let's say, what model that I spoke about, and to build India's first truly mass market digital entertainment ecosystem. So in the long term, our plan is that it isn't just an OTT platform for us, in, but it should become a kind of a flag bearer and the cultural backbone of the digital market. So that is our aspiration, that is our vision for the company.
Yes. And now in the last part of this podcast, we'll play a rapid fire round where both of you have to just answer in just one line. So no double, triple lines. So first of all, it's to Pratik. So one myth about OTT in India.
Sex sells, which is a outright fallacy.
Samrat.
I think for me, it's a one size fit all strategy. Okay, because the essence of Indian culture is what we call unity without uniformity and diversity without division. Okay, we are all aware about this kind of a mantra. And the current mantra is localization. So my suggestion is to develop the ability to understand and connect with the deeply rooted culture of the consumers, which will give us a substantial edge. But one size fit all strategy doesn't work, and which is a myth.
Done. Now the second one is to Pratik again. One big mistake most platforms are making today.
They are looking at the lens. They're looking at India with the urban lens. Is very similar to what Samrat had said. Is that one size fits all? So sitting in Warsaw, thinking about how Jaunpur is not going to be possible. Even if you're from Jaunpur and you've been there away from there for 5 years, the world has changed there. That's a big, huge mistake.
Yeah. So, my answer is also similar to what Pratik just said. So, chasing urban multiplex storytelling and calling it a mass story really doesn't work. So, you have to know your consumer, and then you have to design your content accordingly.
The next one, interesting one to Pratik again, is that one content format that will dominate Bharat.
There's not going to be one content format that's going to be there. Micro dramas are here to stay. Long format content like a cinema is going to stay. And series definitely, and even infinite series like our television is going to stay. India is a very heterogeneous country, and people are very open to all sorts of content. So there's not going to be one sort of content that's going to be. If someone tells me that this is going to happen, the micro dramas are going to take over everything, I'm sorry, I do not agree.
Samrat.
I think, OTT content making for me requires a lot of television discipline, yet it should have the aspiration and the nuances of filmmaking. That is an ideal, kind of a way to make an OTT format, which would cut across with the OTT consumers. So I think the daily soap intensity with short video addiction is perfect for mobile first and time fragmented consumption.
Next one growth lever,
consumer centricity. That's simply as I was talking about, inspiration, aspiration, and learning. These are the three pillars on which a content stands on. Unique characters, etc. But if there is no consumer centricity, if there is no knowledge about the consumer, understanding on the consumer, and focus, very sharp focus, bullseye focus on the consumer, these three pillars will fall flat. So consumer centricity is the thing for us.
Samrat.
Yeah, for me, there are two things: consumer centricity and innovation. So cracking the last mile content reach to win the heart of our Bharat consumers. So that is the big bet.
The last one to Pratik to start with is that your advice to founders who are building for non-metro cities.
Chase for value for money. Don't chase for value. Don't try to make it cheap. Don't try to make it just affordable. Don't look at it. look at it from the bank that the money that they spend is a bang for the buck or not. So it's value for money that's more important for the real Bharat than just price sensitivity.
Samrat.
I have always followed a philosophy that, create a brand. If you've been able to create a brand, revenue will automatically follow. That is one piece of advice. And number two is embrace consumer centricity, which I and Pratik, reiterating the fact that, you have to embrace consumer centricity. You have to know your consumers from non-metros. Figure out the fundamental aspects that trigger the consumption behavior. Via that, you will be able to create a long-lasting brand, and in a process will be able to deliver value to all the stakeholders who are involved in the process.
Thank you so much, Samrat and Pratik, for taking us through your journey of building Rocket.in, and also, kind of answering all the pertinent questions that we had around the entire business in layman and in an understandable, so that our audience can understand that as well. We look forward to seeing Rocket. By leaps and bounds and reach all the tier 2, tier 3 and even the tier 1 cities as well, because metro के बाद तो फिर tier 1, tier 2 जैसे उदयपुर जैसी cities तो tier 1 में आ गई kind of.
Absolutely.
So it reaches there, and that's the need of the day. Thank you so much for joining us and taking out time to share your insights.
Thank you, Rishikesh.
Our
Thank
pleasure.
you for inviting us on your podcast. It was really enjoyable. Thank you so much. Thank you.